Welcome, guys. Let's talk about Qi Gong. All right, first question from Jim Templeman. Hey, Jim. When I was able to watch my thought arise, pass by, fade away, I could walk around a block in a neighborhood in a normal way while remaining unaware of the content of my thoughts. Only the phases of the thoughts arising, passing by, and fading away. Later, I was able to drop off the conscious awareness of the thoughts phase as well while sitting. I did go for a walk around the block once in that state. I say I was about 98% emptiness. I was mixing Chan, which is Zen, Chan is the Chinese word for Zen, with Ting Tai and Suji Sanmei. Samadhi of following one's thought. Okay? But I keep wondering if it was any different from Taoist sitting and forgetting, 做梦 in Chinese, which is famous. One of the original Taoist sitting practices were emptiness sitting practices from the Zhou dynasty, referenced in Chengzu, the third oldest scripture in Taoism. So, is empty mind or emptiness the same as the emptiness referred to in Taoist meditation? That's a pretty common question in a lot of Qigong forms. So, yeah, let's talk about that. So, we all heard, for those that follow Buddhism, about the no mind or the empty mind or emptiness state. And then we hear about emptiness meditation, or the highest truth in Buddhism is emptiness. Is that the same? The answer is no. But the English word, both of them is called emptiness. So sometimes people get confused. So I would like to talk about that. So let's say you have a lot of thoughts and your mind can't shut up. You're constantly overthinking and you can't get the thoughts out. And worse than that, you voluntarily put more thoughts in your head by using devices, right? So now you got overthinking, which if it gets really bad, it can cause all kinds of chronic stress problem and anxiety. This is well documented in modern science, right? So we think too much. So we have ways in which we escape from too many thoughts. And most people, they go shopping or they go gambling or they go watch a movie, they go play sports, something that make them forget about themselves and forget their thoughts. That's a form of escape, and it makes them feel better, like a Band-Aid momentarily. But as soon as they stop the movie, or as soon as they get out of the casino or whatever they're doing, their mind starts yapping again. And they're like, oh, here we go again, right? And then here comes the stress. So this stress is building up chronically. Not to mention the fact that when you're escaping from yourself or trying to forget about yourself by watching a movie or something, your brain is still working actively. You're still receiving stimuli, receiving information, and you're still loading it with stress. You're just not aware of it. So all this chronic stress is building up. You go escape from it. You're still working your brain. And then this turns into a little rabbit hole loop. And people are struggling with stress a lot of times. One of the many reasons. So empty mind becomes something that people are very happy to taste for the first time when they go to, let's say, a yoga studio and they learn to meditate, or maybe they buy a book and learn to meditate, or maybe their psychologist showed them, or maybe they go to a retreat. Whatever they do, one of the first thing you learn in psychology, anchoring methods, is that you focus on one thing so that 10,000 thoughts will drop away. Because the nature of your intention is, you might think you have a lot of thoughts, but you can actually literally only think about one thing at a time. So even if it seems like 5 things, it's actually one thing after another. But because the sequence is so damn fast, you think you're multitasking, but your brain is not. It's usually only thinking about one thing at a time. This being the case, if you're overwhelmed with 10,000 thoughts, psychology will use a technique called anchoring, where you focus on one thing and one thing only. Intensively concentrate, one-pointed. Just by concentrating on one thing, the 10,000 thoughts, the volume gets toned down. I don't know who came up with it first. This anchoring idea is very popular in traditions around the world, whether it's Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism. Not so much Taoism, but definitely Buddhism and Hinduism for thousands of years. So you might count beats, you see them chanting, or they might count their breath, or they might focus on the breath, or they might have a mantra where they're chanting in their head, or they might focus on certain points in the body. All these mental, psychological, or just tricks to anchor the mind into one thing. The reason why there's so many tricks is because, well, people have different personality, and certain tricks work better for others. By doing these tricks, including observing your thoughts, counting your breath, observing the sensation of your thoughts, all these things are anchoring method that eventually your mind experiences emptiness. So the screen is still on, but there's no movie playing. You're fully aware, fully awake, but you finally get some relief because there's no million thoughts going by. I mean, you're not dead, so maybe there's one little thought, right? So they call that the empty mind, or they call it the no mind, the non-thinking mind. Many names, but the idea is the empty mind. That reduces stress enormously if it becomes a habit through practice and if you get good at it. So there's enormous health benefits. And psychology has well documented the great anti-stress benefits of anchoring. So I don't need to go into that. Good medical evidence on that. So yeah, it's really good. But is it the same as the emptiness that Zen would talk about at the highest level? Or is that the emptiness that sitting and forgetting talk about in Taoism? The answer is no. Because the first thing I talk about is really emptying the content of your mind, being fully awake while being empty of thoughts. That's that kind of emptiness. In the case of Taoism and Hinduism, for example, the emptiness they're talking about is different. It means, like from a quantum physics point of view, you got matter, right? Behind matter is energy. It goes by many different names: 0-point energy, dark energy, unknown energy, right? Well, this energy that's behind matter, that science call all these names, in the East, they'll call it by different names because it's a different language. In Hinduism, they call it Brahman. In Taoism, they call it Qi, Wu Qi, One Qi, or Tao, or emptiness. In Buddhism, they call it emptiness, or Buddha nature. So that type of emptiness is actually talking about the energy behind matter, or the energy that made matter. That's different emptiness than saying an empty mind. So I think it's important when you're talking about the empty mind to put the word mind behind it, or just simply use a modern psychological term like anchoring, right? So it's really good for anti-stress relief. And if you do Taoist sitting that you're referring to, it actually includes that at the most basic level. Because stopping the mind from yapping is the first thing. So how does Taoism do that is through pure energetics. It doesn't use psychological tricks like counting beats, counting breath, repeating a sentence. It doesn't use anchoring psychological tricks to calm the mind. It looks at it through energy, blood, and the center of the body. So if we can simplify it for the purpose of this podcast, you have three centers while you're sitting. You have your lower burner, right? 2 inches below your belly button, inside your body right here. Then you get your heart center, heart chakra, your middle dantian, many names, right? But basically this area here. And then you have the third eye linking to the top, your brain basically. So you got 3 center, okay? When you first start sitting, your mind is going a million miles an hour, but you don't empty your mind with anchoring or with tricks. Instead, you learn energetic techniques where all the blood goes into this burner, which is 85% of the immune system. This center, according to Taoism, is your Ming, which is responsible for your physical health or physical energy boost. So while you're sitting here, eventually the qi or the blood will gather, and you don't have to make theories about it, or you don't have to believe or disbelieve it. You'll feel it because it will feel like a warm sensation here, and after a while it will start to move. And when this area gets developed, you'll notice that you have a lot more energy, but it's very calm. You don't even need a coffee or a nap, but you can stay up all night. You need less sleep. It's great. When I first experienced it, it was really important because that year I was going through a major health crisis. And I had no energy, but as I developed this area through post-training, it cured all my chronic fatigue and adrenaline fatigue problems. Anyways, so that's the first level of sitting, where everything goes here. When that happens, because it is here, the blood and the qi, it is no longer here. Because it used to be here, but now it's all down here. When that happens, you naturally stop thinking, because you're not up here, you're down here. Right? So that's the Taoist way of achieving an empty mind. Not by anchoring or using mental tricks to empty the mind, but rather using the blood and the qi and the energetics itself. It's easy to talk about this, very logical and simple, but you actually got to learn the actual training methods for it to work. Once you get past this level, it goes into this level. At this level, you already have an empty mind, but now you're working with opening and releasing the center. This is the center where people usually start to feel an enormous amount of peace, an enormous amount of bliss, which is super important for people struggling with anxiety and also deep depression, right? Now, but before it gets better, it gets worse. As you're opening this area, the detox stage starts to happen, where childhood memory, things you really don't want to remember, a lot of suppressed emotions, your shadow side comes out. That's why when you work on this center, the first few months, I usually watch my students very closely. Or when I was going through it, I was calling my teacher almost every single day. It's no joke when you go through that. You need some support if you have it available. Once you go through that stage, it feels great. You finally get all the garbage out that you've been carrying for years, right? That's when that bliss stage or peaceful stage starts to happen. You get this huge serotonin and oxytocin and also endorphin rush. You start feeling brightness. You start feeling a lot happy. But there's not dopamine, so there's not an excitement that goes up and down. It doesn't leave you. It's like serotonin. It's just very smooth. And it feels really good. And it's a complete different feeling than simply emptying your mind when you're in this center. Because when you empty your mind, you're basically having stress relief, right? You don't feel any stress anymore because you're not overthinking anymore. It feels great. But that's a lot different than feeling the euphoric chemical actual energetic high that you feel when you're in this center. So I hope I answer your question. And then when you get to this center, that's when you merge into emptiness or the energy behind matter. And that is what sitting and forgetting of Taoism is about. And that has a complete different effect than just feeling bliss. Because up to this point, it was just about healing. Bettering your physical health while reducing stress and stopping overthinking. Dealing with childhood trauma, your deepest fear and phobias, and releasing it so you can, finally say goodbye to some anxiety and depression and feeling that bliss, serotonin rush, and peace, right? So this is good. But up to this point we just talked about is just healing. After that is the merging process, which I'll talk about in another episode. It deals with death anxiety. It also deals with the issue of identity, and it deals with living in the horizontal plane in the red dust. Because until we deal with that, this plane, basically is kind of silly. You can do all the healing work you like, but it's kind of like going to the gym. I always use this metaphor: running, lifting weights, trying really hard to get in shape, having a great workout, sweating like buckets, and then coming out after all that work and then smoking a carton of cigarettes and eating 2 pizzas and a couple of cheesecakes, and you're kind of canceling the effect, right? So when you do all these healing work, if you repeat the lifestyle that produced the suffering in the first place, what the Buddhists call the hungry ghost in the red dust, we'll talk about in another episode, it doesn't really matter how much you meditate, how much Qi Gong you do, how great your diet is. You're repeating karma lifestyle effects that it's going to cause this to happen over and over again. You're canceling out the effect, right? Anyways, leave your message below and we'll talk about it in another episode. All right, guys. Happy New Year. For those that want to actually learn these things, please go to amchanlive.com. I offer a Taoist community with a full support forum for the students. And I want to say hi to the students because I noticed they've been watching this. And also, we train together once a week in a live stream class in a guided Qi Gong, covering sitting, standing, moving, walking, and laying down meditation from Taoism that we talk about. And also, there's private messaging and private forums, so I can give personalized coaching, as well as, all courses are stored in the student library. So if you miss a live stream class, it doesn't matter. It's fully recorded. All right, guys. See you next time. Have a good night.